Hello, family. Welcome to the Friday presentation, How to Want to Be Here. My name's Betty, and I'll be moderating. This is Katie Darling and Greg Andrews. Katie Darling and Gregory Andrews call themselves New Wave, not New Age mystics. Greg was raised in a warm family in the hot South and spent a lot of time in the Bible Belt Church. And Katie was raised in a cold family in England by two religiously atheist physicists. After astonishing lives of spirit interventions, they met miraculously in 2020 and are now married, living in integrated oneness together. You won't believe how they got here.
Thank you. Thank you, Betty, for that wonderful introduction. Thank you all for coming to our talk on how to want to be here. We're so happy that you're here with us today. My name, as she says, is Greg Andrews, and this is my wife, Katie, and we do call ourselves New Wave Mystics. And our mission is a love transmission. And this is my blind cane, but this is not a talk about limitations. It's a talk about love, transformation, and miracles. And so, what is a miracle? A miracle is a change in perception. Let me just say that again because it's really central to our talk today that we understand what a miracle is. A miracle is a change in perception. So you're really fortunate today because we're not only going to give you a talk about love transformation and a love transmission, we're also going to answer the question of how to want to be here, but we're also going to offer you miracles as well, starting right now. Now, I'm sure many of you are surprised to see that this humble blind cane was also a Native American love flute. And, oh, I hope it's felt. And just like that flute, the blind cane is more than it seems to be, so it is with our human lives and our bodies. We are much more than we seem to be. Just as this flute transforms breath into lovely music, our human lives and human bodies are instruments for change. We have the power to transform challenges into opportunities for growth. Now, we know that the Earth can seem to be a prison planet, as we've heard many times in NDEs, but it is our contention and bold testimony that right here where Earth seems to be, it's possible to avail ourselves of heaven on earth and live our happily ever after right here, right now. But it does take a little bit of effort, and it does take a change in perception. Katie and I are big, big fans of NDEs. We've been to these conferences many, many times in the past, and we're NDE junkies. In fact, some of you, we know your story better than you do. But this is not an NDE story, but this is a tale of how we were both called to an extraordinary journey of embarking on practical mysticism through a series of spiritually transformative experiences, STEs. Let me give you my brief backstory. I was born in northern New Jersey. When I was 13, we moved to Savannah, Georgia. And here's where I had my first cultural transformative experiences, because I went from the in-your-face northeast suburbs of New York down to the rural South, where there was racism and closed-mindedness and religious Bible Belt. I got an Air Force scholarship to go to college. I graduated from college, entered into the Air Force as a commissioned officer, and I began my career in the computer operations field, in the field of military intelligence. Now, we know the joke about military intelligence being an oxymoron, right? So we're not going to go there with that. But I met my then wife in the Air Force, and she was also an Air Force officer, and our career was earmarked for success. We were going to live a highly distinguished life as two military officers and have a prestigious career. But during college, I read a book called Seth Speaks, The Eternal Validity of the Soul. Anybody read that book? I can't see your hands. No, don't raise your hands. But that book speaks to reincarnation and karma and probable realities and the illusion of time. And it was a transformative experience for me because even though I was in the Air Force and I was raised in a Southern Baptist upbringing, that book kind of changed my perspective of life, and I was really never really comfortable in the Air Force anymore. After a few years, I rose to the rank of captain. I obtained my MBA degree, and after my commitment, I had to leave the Air Force because that book ruined my military career. I got out of the Air Force and entered into the civilian world where I thought, oh, this is going to be a lot easier. Civilians are easier, but I found out in the civilian world it's a lot more cutthroat than the military. This is when my life really began to really unravel because I was living an unattained spiritual consciousness, and I combined that with an unattained material consciousness, and what I had was a big mess. My life began to unravel. I got a divorce. I was up and down in my life, and then in 2006, I faced a real catastrophe. I lost 95% of my vision in a matter of 3 months. But this was as a result of an injury I sustained in the Air Force during a training incident. As you can imagine, this is really a dark night of the soul, both figuratively and literally. You know, A Course in Miracles says a miracle is a change in perception. Boy, can you imagine the change in perception I received in 2006 when I lost my sight? But life was unfolding really as it was because in spite of the fact that I lost my sight, I got a new perspective on life. And here's where I decided to make a change. I had decided to dive full force into a spiritual commitment or perish in the attempt to demonstrate it. And so I was led to return to A Course in Miracles. I had flirted with the spiritual text of A Course in Miracles in the 90s, but here I dove in wholeheartedly. I couldn't read the text, obviously, so I obtained the entire Course in Miracles on 42 cassettes. I listened to those cassettes day and night, hour after hour, day after day, month after month, until after a few months, I received the entire download. I attained the consciousness of A Course in Miracles. One day I was a student of A Course in Miracles, and then before I knew it, with my massive change in consciousness, I became a miracle worker and a teacher of God. So much so that when I joined my local Course in Miracles group, after just a few months, they asked me to lead the group. Now, I don't know if you can imagine this, but A Course in Miracles is a lot of reading. So for a blind person to lead a Course in Miracles group was pretty amazing. But I did exemplify A Course in Miracles teachings. I did that for a few years. And then, after a few years, I was introduced to a little-known 20th century mystic by the name of Joel Goldsmith, whose work is called The Infinite Way. And here's where I began to integrate mystical teachings with metaphysical teachings. You know, there's 4 major areas in our lives that we need to address. There's love, health, wealth, and life purpose. And with the change from going from metaphysics into mystical oneness, metaphysics is two-ness, good versus evil. Mystical is oneness. Everything is okay just as it is, and everything's perfect. And so I realized as I went from my metaphysical teachings to mystical teachings that my 4 areas of categories of change were being mystically, magically, magically fulfilled. My wealth was being magically fulfilled, like my finances were being fulfilled almost instantaneously. My health, in terms of operations on my eyes, I got those operations and to stave off further blindness. My life purpose of teaching and offering healings and playing my Native American flute were being abundantly fulfilled. I got the chance to offer my spiritual teachings to small groups. I got invitations to play my Native American flute and give love transmissions to groups all around the Bay Area. And my energetic healings were different. I received a higher potency, and it was almost like the miracles of healing was even more than before. Then, after I got this new attained consciousness, there was one area of my life that was still not being completely fulfilled, and that was in the area of love. But I knew that if I was patient and I got out of the way and I allowed this oneness consciousness to take over, it would fulfill the area of love for me too. So in 2020, I entered into a one consciousness webinar and was being broadcast out of the Netherlands. I was in Savannah, Georgia at the time. And Katie Darling was in Mill Valley. And because I had enough patience and understanding to let the oneness take over, this one consciousness seminar brought us together. Now, I'm not going to tell you exactly what happened, because I'm going to leave that kind of as a cliffhanger. But I'm going to turn it over to Katie. And Katie's going to tell you a little bit about her story. She's going to give us more insight onto how to want to be here. And she's also going to take us on an immersive journey out of the 3D body into our amazing 5D new wave body. So here's Katie.
Nice. Am I on? Oof, yes, I am. Oof. Oh no, the thing's in the pocket, excuse me. I don't know if I'm hot or cold. So how to want to be here. Thank you for wanting to be here with us. So as Greg said, we call ourselves New Wave Mystics. And it's not a cult, it's not a tribe, it's the opposite of tribal consciousness. Tribes have an in and an out, and are actually not that evolved. But New Wave Mystics is an actual technique, which I'm going to give a bit of in this talk, because it's how I got to want to be here, and it's incredibly similar to him, because as you've probably discerned, it was a kind of sleepless in Seattle life that we had. He calls it sightless in Savannah. How to want to be here. First way is by becoming new. New is an incredibly powerful word. I've been writing 13 books, but one of them was called New Wave Mystics, and my potential editor said, you can't use the word new because it's old, you know. And that's like, wait a minute. There's no other word for new, innovative, novelty, and so on. So new is the real meaning of now. New is another word, whoops, for God. Oh my God, you just got the whole story. That's pretty funny. That was new. So, no shame or should in wanting to be here. And all chaos resolves into perfect harmony and order in the new moment. So in every moment we think that there's this sort of gun of the Big Bang, or God created the universe, and we shot out of it, and now we've been forgotten and we've been washed up on the beach of 3D and the Earth and the prison planet, and that makes us shrapnel. We were created like in the past, and he just there by ourselves. If I came out of a gun, if I came out of a Big Bang, or even a God that went to sleep on the seventh day, I'm shrapnel, right? So the actual science is that non-linearly, everything is arising, bubbling up like a spring in the now. And that's the only causality. It's only ever now. And now is the point of power. And now is God. And it's always new. So we know the power of now. So how about the power of new? So that's the new part. You can do that every morning. Oh, this is going to happen. That happened. Oh, no, wait a minute. There's a new wave birthing through me at this moment. I'm going to put my attention on that. So it's been sitting up there. There's no shame or should in not wanting to be here. And I was going to say that if this were the title of this talk, you wouldn't come to this talk because you know how to drive a car, right? So obviously if you're in this talk, some part of you doesn't know how to want to be here. And all of us have a part that doesn't want to be here. And sometimes we try and have a stiff upper lip, if you know that phrase, and we try to paint over a rusty machine and say, yeah, I'm really grateful for being here. And if you were to ask AI, at least on my algorithm, why did we come to Earth, you would hear about, I'm looking at you, Christian Sundberg, the contrast contract. So if you asked AI, why did I come to Earth, it would say, you made a pre-life contract. It's already in the algorithm, right? Why the hell did I do that? Because you wanted to experience contrast. What? Contrast? Oh, great, contrast. Think of the things that you've been through in your life. Oh, great, contrast. So I'm trying to make a joke out of it because the point of this talk is that we actually partially don't want to be here. And until we actually penetrate that and dissolve it and metabolize it into life urge, then we're just going to keep coming back because that's how it works. So I love watching NDE videos, especially Christians and other ones about pre-life contracts, because I argue with them. And so do the commenters on YouTube. So I just thought I'd make a bit of a joke out of this. So this is Guy Krull, and he's obviously English. I'd like to make a comment to the universe. Hey, you! How about we don't have to go through all that aggro to wake up, huh? Me thinks this is a design flaw. Please fix this bug. Respectfully, GC. And then I just saw this other one a few days ago, obviously also an English person. Note to my higher self, do not ever send me here on Earth to find out about anything. I'm not interested one bit. So when I was 30, I met a spirit guide through a medium, and the guide, through he, the medium, told me that I had contracted to have 200 lifetimes in one. For some reason. And she said, we did not think it was a good idea. We tried to warn you, but you said, I can do so much. You said, I can do so much. I'm just going to go English. I can do so much good, and I can clear up so many lives. And we said, are you sure? And we said it, she actually said, and we said it 3 times. So what I actually found out in the course of 73 years that I've been on this planet is that the part of me that doesn't want to be here is the big part of the reason I'm here. It's a complete catch-22. So, you know, we love NDEs because we hear about how great it's going to be, and we also regain trust in a friendly God, even though he has this strange idea about contrast. And we have this holy longing for something greater. We want to go home, right? How many times have you heard that? The podcaster asks the NDE, do you have any fear of death? Oh, no, 100% no fear of death. In fact, I'm kind of looking forward to it. I'm not an NDE, by the way, but stuff has happened. And they say, I'm kind of looking forward to it, but of course, I would never hasten it, So there's a kind of holy longing that develops within us that puts us on the spiritual path or keeps us on the spiritual path. But there's this concept in Buddhism called near enemies of truth, which means that something can sound a lot like something that's the exact opposite. So an example is humility and humiliation. They kind of sound the same, they got the same roots, but they're completely the opposite. Humility and owning your full power and presence and not hiding your light. Maybe humility was really its own shadow. And so sometimes the holy longing is really death urge. I apologize for my shaking finger here. Sometimes it's the death urge, which Freud named, and it's they always use Greek names, it's thanatos, the death urge. And it creates depression, and it actually takes us out. And my death urge nearly took me out about 10 times in this life. So if you think I don't look 73, it's because I've died many times, but then I actually went through the middle of the emotional pain that caused what took me out. So it's very, very hard work, as you all know. I know that you're all doing the same thing. So the opposite of the death urge, you might think it's called eros, and you might think, oh yeah, sex. No, aliveness, life urge. And my slogan is, don't worry, be wavy. Because it's not death that is actually going to take us where we want to go. And it's not even mutation, before I get to metamorphosis. Mutation is Eckhart Tolle. You go to sleep depressed, and you wake up enlightened forever. Now, I've tried that technique of going to sleep depressed. Who else has tried it? And then, the teachers who have a massive mutation and some NDEers, then they try to reverse engineer what made it happen. But in fact, most of us are on the path of metamorphosis, which is to become a new mystic species in this body, in this lifetime. Like, a butterfly is not a caterpillar with wings. It goes through a massive species change called metamorphosis. It's actually still a big mystery in science. And a dragonfly goes from a swimming creature to a crawling creature to a flying creature, all in one lifetime. And that feels like what's happening to me. Anyone with me? Metamorphosing against kicking and screaming. So that's the initiation that's potentially offered in human life. And in this time, we can do it a lot more easily and faster because we have more information and better technology. So we all know what you resist persists. I made up what you face you can erase, what you feel you can heal, if it's felt it will melt. Slogans really help. 3 a.m. So you can't avoid your emotional pain, and nor can you witness it out of existence, which I tried, as I'll tell you. But you can learn to surf its waves. So the guide said, "Are you sure?" And I was. So you laughed, it's funny. So I showed this picture. I had a slideshow at my 70th birthday 3 years ago. And I thought everyone was going to say, "Oh, what a cute baby Katie was." But everyone started laughing, like you just did. And so this is what I was experiencing. Golly, I can feel everything they're feeling. So who else here is an empath? Quite a few. It's really different. It's really neurodiverse. And who here, by the way, is psychic? Okay, I have a joke for you. You got it. those of you, even those of you who didn't know you were psychic. So because they were all laughing, I said, let's have a contest to put a caption on this picture. And this was the winner. So I was abducted by 2 British atheist nuclear physicists in 1951. It was a very unusual nuclear family. This was everybody else's cloud wallpaper in my little school, and this was our cloud wallpaper. And that is a mushroom cloud, and that is a skull, and this was not the worst poster that I grew up in the middle of in our living room. Because when my parents were part of the English version of the Manhattan Project, and when Hiroshima happened, they were aghast at the terrible genocide, and the campaign for nuclear disarmament pretty much started in our living room when I was a little toddler. And this, which you may call the peace sign, is actually the logo of Campaign for Nuclear Disarmament. My mother was in the room when they made up this logo, and she said that will never work. But it actually, she almost nixed the peace sign. So then it went to Woodstock and became the peace sign. And I was raised within this apocalyptic frequency, which most people are experiencing now. For me, I've been feeling that way since I was born. In fact, I don't feel that way now, and part of the purpose of this talk is to cancel this apocalypse. It's just a thought form, guys. It's just a timeline. Enough. So when I was 7, I'd already been going on marches and ban the bomb demonstrations since I was in my pram. And at the age of 7, I was leafleting the neighborhood, and if people opened the door, I would say, "Have you heard of strontium-90? And if you don't know what it is, you don't need to know." And so also, what happened? Okay. Also in the family was a strong religion. Of stopped turning. Click where? Okay, now it's working. The religion of atheism. So my parents really were religious atheists. My father was a prominent physicist, head of a department, and when the Times needed an opinion piece on atheism, he was the one they called. And the London Students' Union had a debate, and the motion was that modern man has no need of God. And they asked him to propose the motion, and the Archbishop of Canterbury to oppose the motion. So I was, 8 or 9 years old, and I'm sitting there, and there's like hundreds of religious people, and me, and my dad, and about 2 atheists over here. And my father stood up on the stage, and he said, he was also, I tried to find a picture of my father at this debate, and I could only find this picture of my father with the head of the Church of England and her husband and son, if you recognize those people. I never even knew this had happened. That's how anti-royalist our family was. My father never mentioned that he had been with Queen and Prince Philip and Prince Charles. So my father stood up on the stage and said, "Modern man has no need of God because God doesn't exist." And this was my first STE. It's like, oh my God, my dad's God. This is the only thing that makes sense. I became deeply, spiritually atheist. And then, life went on. Puberty happened. And, I often say to clients that if you wonder whether you want to incarnate, do you want to do puberty again? My nuclear family melted down, divorce and everything. So I'm going to take you to 3 STEs. I had 3, and I've named them New, Wave, and Mystic. Went to university to become a therapist, and that's where I had the new mystical experience. So this is me before, this is me before I had my first spiritually transformative experience, which was, I was good and on okay at college, I'd say, right? And this was me after giving satsang to a group of people in Spain. This looks like a reverse makeover by American materialistic standards, right? Because I was at university And I started to feel this calling, like, you already got it, right? Like in Close Encounters, right? And so I took a sabbatical from university and started walking around Europe barefoot. What was I thinking? I have no idea what I was thinking. I ended up on a farm in Holland, and I had a bad experience with a boy, of which I've had many. And walking to the train station afterwards, I had this moment of absolute despair, beyond panic, and absolute terror and despair and aloneness. I had no real family behind me. I'd left college, I'd left friends, and I'm in the middle of Holland, and this boy didn't work, and I'm alone. And at that moment, I remembered that an American student had given me a little flyer about breathing, so I tried breathing. And all of a sudden, I was absolutely enclosed and replaced by a warm, loving presence that, although I didn't know it had happened, because it was more like a walk-in, but in looking back to my life before and life after, it wasn't a what, like, oh, it's the quantum field, and it's the zero-point vacuum, or it's stillness or emptiness. None of that. It was all that. It was infinite, but it was totally personal love. And here's another before and after picture. That's the same year. That's pretty wild, right? And so the only thing I could really do with myself was join a cult. Who else has done that? So the first guru I ran into, I took vows of celibacy, poverty, and obedience, and I spent 12 years experiencing quite a lot of samadhis, hours of meditation. My guru sent me all around Spain and South America, teaching meditation. I gave satsang every day. I was enlightened. Until I realized I was in a cult 12 years later. And I descended because, as Jung said, if you don't integrate your shadow, it will become your destiny. And I didn't come out of all that meditation the way, if you think I ought to be meditating more, be very afraid. So I came out with mystery illnesses, every imaginable physical symptom and pain, weird emotional moods, desperate for love. And I started, therefore, getting into more goddess practices, embodied, Shakti, energy. And I became a rebirther, started doing organic, original breath work, and I did Course in Miracles for 2 years all the way through. It was only 4 years out, Course in Miracles. I was early. And then somebody took me to a channeling, and was stuck in this hotel room on Miami Beach, and the guy, the channel, falls asleep, like that. And then he sits up and he starts chanting in a sort of Sanskrit. Door of my heart, open wide, I wait for thee, which is an actual Yogananda chant, which the medium did not know. And I didn't know the medium, and I never was, Yogananda was not my guru. But through this medium came Paramhansa Yogananda, and he said, kitty, kitty, kitty. Me? What, me? Because there was like 20 of us in this little room. He said, you're a therapist. And I said, what? Therapist. I said, therapist? Should I go back and finish my degree? He said, no, it will be sooner than you think. Just go home. And I kid you not, I went home. On my answering machine were 3 people asking me for therapy sessions, 2 of whom I didn't even know. So I went with it. And I gave myself the degree of MSU. Which also didn't fly with the parents, because they have like 10 letters after their name, everyone in the family. So I did that for 15 years, jumping ahead. I'm in my mid-40s. I've been teaching seminars and a transformational consultant, doing pretty well, but things kind of, go in cycles. So I was going through one of those times when you're sick and you're broke and you're stuck in bed for 9 months and you might get evicted. That's what was happening. And then I had my second awakening, in which the same presence overwhelmed me, except this time it was pure waves. And it was giving me a transmission that everything at every level of reality is only waves. Now, you might say, oh yeah, wave particle. No, there's only waves. Particles are just an impression when the wave function collapses and attention freezes. But there are still infinite waves at all levels. So my body was starting to have spontaneous waves going through it. My emotions were starting to kind of move in waves instead of frozen masses of fixated attention. My thoughts were starting to flow. I saw how everything is all one. And this presence told me to call it Mother Wave. And within 3 days, I jumped out of bed. In 2 weeks, I had a living room full of people that I did not advertise, and something called Mother Wave Institute started, through which I taught for 15 years, 5,000 people, 7 levels. Each level was 60 hours, and it just kept unstoppably downloading through me the information that I got from the Mother Wave, and it still is unstoppably downloading through me. And this is not me, this is definitely a divine intervention. So I'm going to take us on a journey in a moment. So you would all agree that the universe is breathing. No, that's not even wrong, because you think of it as like there's a universe and it's breathing. But no, the universe is breathing. There are no nouns, it's all verbs, it's all waves. The universe is breathing. Breathing is the universe. Movement is not something we do, it's what we are. And everything is made of waves. You see that on the left, you see the flowing dynamic, fluid dynamics of some liquid under turbulence. And on the right, you see the same thing, except it got frozen. Somebody put hairspray and it became a tree. It went from wet on the left to dry on the right. That's how the tree got created, isn't it? Waves of fluid motion, and then dry it out, a tree. Dry it out, a human body. See your fingerprints? See the sand dunes? The sand dunes, a wave went through the sand, and then it kind of froze in this pattern called sand dunes. The fingerprints, the soul wave, at 3 months into gestation, the soul wave enters, and it prints out in your fingerprints, and that's it. You're you. You're the unique soul in that body. So, you get it? Yes? Just say, I get it, and then it'll sort of, then it'll work. So heading into our experiential experiment. And I just want to see. Okay, I'm doing okay for time. Amazingly, I must have been talking really fast. So, I want to invite everybody to want to be here in this experience now. Forget about the one you just heard, which I heard all about all the way up till starting talking, and the one you're going to hear, and just be here new. This is a new one. Be here new. And close your eyes and just imagine that you are a sponge, a living sponge. Except you got washed up on the beach. And now you're a dry sponge. You lost your mother ocean, where all your friends are, where all the nutrition and love and home is. And now you're a dry, contracted, frozen, half-dead sponge on the beach with a holy longing for the ocean. Except that now a wave is coming in from that ocean, and it's pulling you back into the ocean. And you're going to go from dry to wet. And when a sponge goes from dry to wet, 3 things happen. The first one is it expands enormously, like 5 times. If you put one of those little flat sponges in water, that's you, little flat sponge. Put yourself in the water of the ocean of chi that we're in, so that you can swim in air and swim in the ocean of the mother wave, which is right here. It's not over there on the other side of a veil. It's right here. Wet and wavy and oceanic, expanded, And then another thing that happens to the sponge is it goes from static to dynamic. It starts to move in waves, spontaneous waves. So if those spontaneous waves want to take you over, nobody's looking, except me. So allow yourself to come out of the frozen pain body of self-conscious contraction. And this is not about all touchy-feely ecstatic dance. It can actually, you can expand invisibly even and become massively wavy and fluid by what you're giving your attention to. So now we're going to do the next part, which is where we're going to do an OBE without traveling in a little body out to another physical place. We're going to dissolve the sense of having this solid body bag, 3D body that has us trapped. So open your eyes and look down at your feet. And you can stay wavy. Feel free to stay wavy for the rest of your life. That was a shift forever. And ask yourself, am I in those feet? And now look at your legs. Am I in those legs? Now you might say, yeah, I can feel sensations from those legs, but so can one of our friends who is an amputee, and he feels sensations in his missing leg. He has a phantom leg syndrome. It's the real thing. The sensations that we have in our body that make us think that we are in our body are phantom body sensations. They're just rendered by the brain into consciousness in this virtual reality simulation. But in fact, we are right now in this ocean of waves, and the body is within us. We're not inside this body. So look again, look at your torso. Am I in that torso? Probably not. If you were, you would know what all the organs are without having done anatomy. You'd be able to tell me exactly where they all are. And so then, am I in my head? Most people say, well, yeah, I'm in my head. I'm behind my eyes. So now let's see if we really are in our head. This is based on Douglas Harding on having no head, if anyone knows that. It's a method of spiritual enlightenment by beheading yourself. So take your finger and make a laser come out of your pointer and point it somewhere on a wall. And look at where the laser is touching, not your finger. And follow the path of the laser as you come down towards yourself. Don't look at your finger, look at what the finger is pointing at. And now you're pointing at part of yourself, and look at what it's pointing at. And come up here, look at what it's pointing at, not the finger. And now bring it up here, and look at what it's pointing at. Look at what it's pointing at. Don't be clever. Just look at what it's pointing at. There's no head here. It's all empty, fluid, love space. There's nobody here that's inside a body. We are the field of wavelicious consciousness. So I was teaching all this stuff in this Mother Wave Institute with all these people, and I had a soulmate, gorgeous husband. Life was terrific. People were wonderful. Business was marvelous. So why did I need my third awakening? Well, as it turned out, I had only had 5 lifetimes, even though I was 52. I'd only had 5 of my 200 lifetimes. And I can't even tell you the next part, which has been the last 20 years, because it's so intense that it would be worse than one of those NDEs where you hear too many medical details and you start thinking, oh, I'm getting that. I think I'm getting that, right? So I went into a massive dark night of the soul. And just as a little tiny piece, my soulmate husband was having an affair with the office manager, and all kinds of unbelievable betrayal was happening. Fake news was happening. Lots of people turned against me from hearing lies, and I lost everything. Friends, my school, my access to money, my legal status, my home, my husband, my best friends. It was absolutely dramatically intense. And it went on for years, and it included a serious diagnosis, the one we're all afraid of. And so meanwhile, Greg was on the other side of the San Francisco Bay going blind. And so I went mystical. I had already been doing metaphysics. I created all this stuff through kind of law of attraction, really. You know, the house, the husband, I created it all. And that's where it will always, and only ever always, turn around on you, because it's still within the eye of duality, creating what the ego wants. So I went mystical, and I got into real practical mysticism through the same teaching that Greg ended up with, which was Joel Goldsmith. And I started to experience that mysticism was the most practical thing. And it resolved my issues of, well, see this list of issues, it resolved my issues of supply, my mystery illnesses. I started to be able to shift them very quickly. And my life purpose. I had plenty of clients. But there was one that was missing, as you already heard. And so I hadn't dated this whole time since all this betrayal. Everyone was telling me, you got to go online. I was like, I'm not going to go market myself online and shop for a man. It's like, even law of attraction, that's more sophisticated than that. That's how I got the last one. You know, I'm going with God this time. So I was very lonely when lockdown started because I didn't have a family. They're all dead, and anyway, they had not been a great supportive family. And all my friends had family, and they were just so happy that their children were living with them or they were with their spouse. I was alone. And so I got drastically lonely. I mean, desperately lonely. And so I started contemplating this mystical principle that has no opposite. So mystical principles are not thoughts that have an opposite. They're principles that have no opposite. I am home in God's love right here, right now. I started to, while I was breathing and waving and doing my practices, I started to know that truth, not to recite it like a mantra, but to actually lean into knowing that that was true. And as a matter of fact, I had a moment where I actually felt the feeling, just like when you're newly in love and it's God. And that was what I had been really aiming for 16 years. I wasn't going to get into a relationship until I really felt married to that infinite source. And so I saw that there was this webinar happening called One Consciousness. And I saw Greg on the little Zoom picture. And I got him into conversation. And I abducted him from Savannah to California. And we've been living in romantic enlightenment, which is something that we teach to couples also, ever since. So the invitation is, are you now a New Wave mystic? Yes! The answer is yes! So we're up for comments and questions if we have time.
All right, thank you so much for your presentation. It was wonderful. I have a microphone for anybody who has questions. Okay.
Hello. Pleasure, both of you, for your sense of humor. Thank God. This awfully gets dry after a while. Death and more death. So I'm going to ask a really, really hard question, and you can just say no. What is your perception of all of reality?
My perception of all of reality?
Well, you mentioned a number of things in your talk, quantum this and all of that. I'd like to have sort of an overall picture of what the big picture is of all of reality.
I'll let you handle that.
Okay. Well, I feel that the answer love is not just a slogan. It's really that love is scientific. Actually, Eben Alexander said that. Love is scientific. And I'm very into science, as you can imagine from my upbringing, and real science, not New Age science. And now the latest science is about qualia. First it was quarks and matter and energy, then it's quantum, but now it's qualia, is the primary object, the primary atom of reality. Qualia means qualities. It means subtle, nuanced qualities of consciousness, and reality creates itself behind that, rather than building it reductionistically building up from matter to qualities of consciousness like love. I feel that the whole of reality is love. Sounds so corny, but what else can you say to that question?
Well said.
It's the qualia of love.
Anyone else? Question or comment?
So, what life are you on now?
That's a really good question. We've made a 20-year commitment, so I don't know how. I'm hoping it's like 199.
I saw the other day when someone was having a birthday, and the answer was not happy birthday, but happy eternity.
How long after you guys got together did you start coaching couples on how they could experience what you both are experiencing?
Well, when Greg showed up, I was already coaching couples, and it's amazing, the things I was saying, I hadn't been in a relationship for 16 years, and I was really able to heal couples out of terrible situations. And then Greg showed up, and then people would catch a little glimpse of him, and they'd ask him to be in their sessions. So it was really very soon. It was like it was already happening when you showed up, and it just seamlessly came in.
You mentioned the concept of waves and how everything is sort of simulated in a wave, and I was wondering if that was a type of download. And what resonated with me was, I'm sure anyone who's played around with any type of psychedelics, one of the things that you witness when you look at things is the wave, the wave formation. Mm-hmm. It's undeniable and very apparent.
Yes, I had a couple of slides to just show what started happening to me was I saw, after my wave awakening, I saw everything in terms of fractals and felt. It's very hard to explain that particular shift, but it's similar to, in chaos theory, they have something called dynamical literacy, which is when you start realizing that things are trees, not telephone poles. You know, you start to realize the nonlinear analog nature of reality. So it was kind of like that for me. I see things in patterns and waves more than before, and mostly I actually feel the waves of life, and I highly recommend further depth exploration of this.
I just wanted to say that I really appreciate the topic of this talk, and the way it was delivered through humor was amazing, because I have totally struggled with wanting to be on Earth, which includes, you know, wanting to die and suicidal thoughts and a crazy brain and trying to get to the point where I actually love being on Earth and I love Earth has been such a transformation. And I love how people tell me, Linda, you have changed so much. I used to be so anxious and stressed, and I have a long way to go yet. I don't know how many more I have to go for our lives to figure out. But yeah, I think we've piled some stuff on ourselves in this incarnation, including the fact that we're going through this great consciousness shift, right? And so we're part of the way showers of how you can come from crap, really, and craziness, recovering alcoholic, and 43 years now, so
yay.
Alcoholic very young. But we can be those light bearers for people who are still trying to find their way home, which is here and connected to God. Thank you.
Yes, and I'm a recovering loveaholic and went for 15 years to 12-step programs after my divorce. And what I would say is, in order to be way-showers, we can't just put icing on a cow dung cake. We can't put the happy icing of we're the way-showers and we're the light bringers on the cow dung cake of our core pain. So there is a way to go into the core pain with the wave, with the knowledge that the universe is more than friendly and everything is included. Everything, including my core pain, is part of the process of the divine loving God. And so we need to actually dissolve and digest our emotional pain, not just put icing of gratitude over it, even though gratitude is the attitude.
So this sounds like this idea of kind of moving from this duality into the oneness.
Yes.
So it seems like in my own journey, I'm coming across this tool, this technique, that in the midst of this trying to figure this out, it's like, all right, I need to get recentered, and I go back to the wave.
Yes.
I go back to the new, the now, the middle. And I've been saying to people as time has gone by, I'm trying to just live from this middle place. Is that the same wave, oneness area that you're talking about?
Of course it is. There's only one of it. However, there are some methods that I found through breath and through all kinds of different ways, including beliefs and emotions and all the different levels of life, where you can get wavy at all levels. Don't worry, be wavy.
Thank you so much. Oh, this is going to be our last question. Here you go, Christopher.
This has been most extraordinary to me, especially you said something, the catch-22 of not wanting to be here is the reason we're here. Well, that really struck me right in my heart. When I was younger, I tried not to be here twice.
I think I've seen your video.
What's that?
I've seen your video.
Oh, okay. And but what's so interesting about this is one of the key persons that was one of the very important persons in my life that led me to those decisions was the key character in the book Catch-22. Yeah, he was a bombardier in World War II, and Joseph Heller wrote that book.
I remember that, yeah.
Wrote it about him. He was Yossarian in that. And so this really struck me really hard. You know, it's like I was in another thing and they say, look at all these little, you know, whatever that you notice. And it's like, holy shit, you can't get more direct than that.
Right.
Anyway, yeah, but through my journey, I've come to the realization that I'm here. I'm gonna be here. I am going to express myself. There's no escaping anything. You got to face it and just be here, because when you die or whatever's going to happen, whatever, you have to be the person that you're going to be wherever you are.
Yes.
Then you express that love and light and the higher vibrations as much as you possibly can, no matter where you are and whenever you are. So I found myself here, and that's what I intend to do. So.
Amen. Yes.
Thank you. Thanks, Katie and Greg, so much. And you guys are more than welcome to come up and talk to Katie and Greg. And thank you for being here.
Thank you for being here.
Thank you.